Welcome, everybody, to episode 53 of the Servoy Tech webinars, and welcome to today's live session. And today, yet another exciting session. We're launching the next version of Servoy, and as you may have read on the forum, we are changing the way we number releases. I understood this is the modern way of doing things. Is that right, Sean?
It's very modern.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, guys, welcome again. Oh, the audience is still growing, I see. That's good. If you do have any questions during the session, feel free to post them in the questions channel. We are here to answer all and any of your questions. And we have quite some ground to cover. So sit back, have a sip of your favorite beverage. And I'm enjoying the rain in California. Actually, we had the coldest February ever recorded in California so far for global warming here, Sean. How's the weather there?
Winter.
Oh, okay, good. All right, let's get started.
Yeah, so as Jan mentioned, today's number 53 and episode 53, and we are pleased to announce the coming availability of the 2019 Q1 build. And as Jan just mentioned, we're changing the release cycle a bit. So we are moving away from the semantic versioning, so the 6, 7, 8 dot whatever, to the quarterly builds, and henceforth builds will be known by their quarter, the quarter that they're released in, and there will be no major minor version, and there will also be long-term support builds made yearly. So this is the first of those quarterly builds, 2019.03. We expect this to be released no later than Monday of next week, but we wanted to give you guys a timely preview. We'll be putting it into a release candidate for the month of March, and at the end of the month, we'll make a final version of it. We may make a few rebuilds throughout the month, so we encourage you to download and start testing as soon as it's made available. That'll be announced on the forum. There are a lot of enhancements and maintenance fixes in this build. I think the most notable is our continued work on no CSS theme rolling, and so this webinar will be focused on that. There will be another webinar in 2 weeks, and we will catch you up on some other features coming then. Before we jump into a demo, I know that usually we do the demo first, but I have one slide. I want to talk about why we're doing this and what it means from a product point of view. The theme roller project, which we started some time ago, I think sometime last year, we started that because we want to take away the burden from our customers of a challenge that we're seeing. Although the NG client gives you all the power of CSS3 and all the great things you can do with it, it also creates the challenge not only of learning and using that particular technology, but also just to get a consistent look and feel across your application, and to when you introduce a new component or a new module, then do things match anymore, or all of a sudden you have to go back and refactor everything. So it becomes, I think, very time consuming to maintain your CSS, and also to do things like create variations or themes on a look and feel are even more challenging. So we wanted to step in and really bring it back to our roots, which is to make things productive and easy. And that's why we introduced this project, and this is an update on that. So we're going to do a demo. Excuse me. We'd like to show you how you could generate something like a dark theme without doing any CSS, without having to open up an editor and type in code. And then we want to talk a bit about how to extend it. And then we'll do an overview, which includes kind of a more in-depth about this particular project and what we plan for even future releases. So let's get to it. We're looking at an application that I built this morning. I get up early for these webinars before the sun, and I try to see what I can do by 11 a.m. I think that's a good way to make sure that things are still productive. And this morning, I wanted to start with a sort of a basic solution out of the box, and then kind of make it a dark theme. And the most notable aspect of this whole process is that I don't use any directly use any CSS that I have to put into an editor. So you can see here, this is a just a one screen. It has a tab panel with some fields on it, and we have a grid down below. We have the side nav component on the left and the nav bar across the top with one button in the corner there and some theme icon and text up here. So I didn't want to spend a lot of time putting lots of components on here. I think you get the idea. Things look like they're coherent. The colors, for example, from the side nav match the alternating dark color here in the grid, and you can see the colors for the background here are consistent there, etc. So I want to look under the hood at how we did something like that. And maybe the right way to do this is to build it together, but first I want to take a look at how it's built, and then we can kind of reverse engineer it. So the first thing to close all these. The first thing to notice is when we make an application now, it will generate a style sheet for us that is a less file. And inside that less file, it will be empty except for this import tag. And it's going to import the default Servoy theme. And that's kind of what we customize to be able to get there. You can ignore the stuff down here. This is an example of how you can customize that if you actually want to get into the CSS. We'll talk about that in a minute. So if we look in the media of the project, we can see that there is this is automatically added for you, the custom Servoy theme properties. If I want to open this, it's going to open up an actual visual editor. So I'm not going to edit this directly. In Servoy 8.4, we released the same concept, but you would actually go in and kind of change the properties here. And we had to do that as sort of a bridge to get to this point. And we will continue to develop our less editor to be able to really give you the tools you need to theme your application without getting into the details unless you really need to. So this editor basically exposes every property that's in the theme. The first thing that I want to point out, though, is that right away we realize we're going to have to maintain this sort of default theme. So it's already versioned. I believe these are basically the same because we did have this in 8.4, although we had no editor. And so we will be able to update this theme as needed. And also we would like to be able to offer alternative themes as well. So now a theme itself is not a dark theme. A theme is really the sort of fundamental building blocks that you could actually create variations on that theme. So they really do things at a generic level. And you can see going down the list here, we have exposed properties like a main color, a secondary color, a text color, an inverse of a text color. If I just want to give things a border, what the width is going to be, what the style will be, etc. So we fill these in with some default values at the beginning, but very easily we can go in and change things. In order to make the dark theme that I just showed you, all I did was come in here and start editing some of these properties. And you can see that every property that I've edited is highlighted in blue. If I mouse over it, I get a compare. I get to see three things. I can see the value that I've overwritten. So that the default was that the text would be bright white. But because I'm doing a dark theme, text that's really bright white is kind of harsh. I wanted to dim it down, so I took that down a bit. Also, if I was looking at a change from a prior version, I could see what the property is that I've overridden, what it was in the current version, what it was in the prior version. If I wanted to revert this and say make all my let's see, I did text color here. Well, we'll just do main color. The main color was that sort of blue highlight color. if I wanted to change that and make it red, I'll just come over here and grab this and save it. You can see that it shows now that it overrides the default value. And if I wanted to reset it, I could right click. So now when I come in here, you can see that the selected side nav and the highlighted tab here are red. And so the dark theme I get going with some of these other secondary colors, like this is quite a dark color. The inverse is that light gray. And then we can get into some functions here as well. So you'll notice that the darkest color here is the dark secondary. The main area here is the middle secondary, and then the lighter areas here are the light secondary, and those are accomplished with these darken and lighten functions. So we take the main secondary color, this, which is kind of just a dark gray. If it's a little bit tilted towards blue, I could make it a bit more blue. And now you can see that the whole theme goes a bit towards blue without me really doing much, because the main middle part of the screen here is that color, but then we darken and lighten it so it stays kind of within the same hue, although when you darken it, it really loses its hue, but as you lighten it, you can see even more of the color expression coming out. So I could tell you when I was working on this, I wasted a lot of time just playing with colors, and then I said, oh crap, I got to make a webinar. But it was kind of fun, and I really started to feel the power that I could go in here and really tweak things across the entire application, and I don't get into any code at all. As you can see, there are a lot of properties. We get down to the text colors. One thing I want to point out is that there are properties for all of the standard components, and this is one of the reasons why we have to version this underlying theme, and it's really one of the whole goals of the theme, is that if a new component is released and you just drop it into your application, how do you know that it's going to look and feel to match up with the rest of your application? Well, the way that we can control for that is by exposing more properties that really, get underneath and into the style sheets of those components, and expose the important parts of them so that you could just come in here and tweak them. So you can see that, for example, that side nav selected color is the secondary color, which is the bit lighter gray. You can also see that I put a border width of 4 pixels. Now, automatically, the border of that is going to be the main color here, because this is the default, and that's why I got that little line on the left hand side, and you can see that it's reusing itself. So the selected border color is drawing from main color, and that's how it was able to sort of cascade throughout that. So I didn't really even have to come into side nav to change too much to get that, but I did want to play with the light and dark, and so you can see that by default it goes darker than the secondary color, and that the highlighted color goes what is this? The main color light for the selected text. It sort of brightens up the text a bit. So you can see that really you only have to change 1 or 2 things, and you can go through and mix all the components in and just tweak them, and they should be already themed. The other thing that I want to point out is way down here. There you can see there's some stuff I did for the table. Way down here, there's some brand settings. So these are added to give your application really those standard kind of mix of colors or settings you would have. So like info, success, warning, danger, that kind of thing. And you can go in and really control these properties as well. Now, I really haven't changed too much of this for this dark theme because this sort of goes to the next example that I want to show. This is kind of an overview of how it works. In a minute, we could try to do this from scratch. But I want to jump over to another part of the demo. So if I come over to these built-in selectors, I want to talk about how you might apply these things on individual elements, because right now what I've done is just change sort of at the macro level the properties of the application. The second aspect that this theme roller project includes is the ability to have these sort of pre-built selectors that are easy to attach. And what they really do is they take a bunch of CSS and sort of combine it into little packages that you can just apply to things, so you don't have to go in and define these things yourself in a CSS file. So you can see that I have some buttons here that show you those brand colors. You can see that the one thing I did have to change is that I wanted the dark text on the gray brand color, the tertiary brand color. Everything else is white, which was the default. Here's the outline version of those buttons. And down here we show a bit of just changes in typography. Again, you don't have to make your own classes. You can just sort of attach these to get underline or to transform to uppercase and make bold. This one you can see, maybe you can see through the webinar, there's a hover on it and you can see the cursor changes as well. That's all just done by attaching one of these selectors. So I want to take you under the hood and look at that particular form. So here I've designed this form, and I really just placed a bunch of labels on the form and started attaching things to them. Let's take a look at these buttons real quick. Down here along the style class property, you can see what styles I've added. So I made all of these with the style text center because I want the text to be centered. The way you would have to do that under the hood would be you'd make a new class called text center, and you would put the text align property in that class and you would attach it everywhere you wanted that. Well, this saves you the step of having to do that. And it relieves you from having to even open a CSS file, which is really the whole goal here. And you can see the different brand settings here, button primary, and then we go down the line with secondary, success info warning, that sort of thing. It's more than just the background color, because you can see it's the foreground color. It's also what happens when you hover. You can make these things with a cursor pointer, change the transition speed, that sort of thing, and that can all be controlled without really opening a CSS file. But what you can see is that that was all applied just by applying these sort of pre-built selectors, and you can still customize the selectors without going to CSS. So if you look at the theme properties when I was down in the brand settings, way down here, I did want to customize the tertiary inverse color and make it the same as the text inverse color, which is we have a light text and a dark text, and that's the dark text. So I wanted it to switch to that because that one looked kind of funny with a light gray text over a gray background. So that's one area where I did that. Down here too, as I darken it instead of lighten it when you mouse over it. So these are sort of exposed in a smart way where all I had to do was kind of look at it and say, oh yeah, I want to tweak this, I want to try that, and away I go. These buttons over here are the same, except for they just go with the a different style class. You can see the outline primary, outline, success, etc. Same thing, but just a little variation on that. Even these little headings that I put on here, I just came in and attached a few quick selectors and I was done. I put on the H3, which puts it at a certain kind of font size. And then I also wanted to say there's no borders, but I do want a border bottom. And it automatically attaches the border to that. And you notice that the border colors are all consistent, and even the borders around these outlines, I just put the style selector border, and the border colors on them are all different. And that's one thing that's really powerful, is that the border color is already defined by what it means to be primary or success or warning. All I have to say is, yeah, I want the border on, and it's already looking good. Some more about these built-in selectors, and there's loads of them. I just wanted to decorate some text or to just change the heading size, and you can see that here I was just changing the heading, and then I put some of the brand settings on there. So we have H1 through 6, underline. This one transforms the text, so even if I type in something lowercase, it still goes to uppercase automatically. So you can force that. And this one, we just added the clickable hover, and that's what gave us the pointer cursor and that sort of slow background transition that you saw. That's all just by adding those. And I would point out that you get code complete on all of the available selectors that you have, not just from the theme project, but from your own custom stuff if you've added that. So there's quite a lot there. The good news is that this project is documented. So if we go to the theme roller project on GitHub, that's github.com/servoy/SVY theme roller, we have the wiki documentation, and we will maintain what these selectors are available and what they do. So you can see we have colors and brands, we have typography, etc. So again, this will be a versioned kind of thing, but we expect to have to enhance this or fix things along the way. So this is where, if you really want to get into the details of it, you can read what these are for. But again, we haven't had to write any CSS at this point. What I thought we could do next is actually try to make a theme from scratch, so you get a feel for it, and then we'll go through an overview of the slides. Actually, let's do the overview first, and then we'll do the sort of off-script thing. So let's kind of drill into a bit more about this project. So I just want to remind you of, why we're doing this, what's the goal, because we are adding things into the product. Our mission is to take the best of breed tools like, less and CSS3, so that you can have great applications, but we need to make it easy to use, because every time you add a new technology, it shouldn't mean that you have to become an expert in that technology. So that's the real goal here. At the same time, we want to remain open and extensible. So what I showed you didn't require that you have to write any CSS or any less, but if you want to and you need to, you certainly can, and then you can really get in and tweak things, and or you could create your own themes and that kind of stuff. So we want to bring developers along, go fast when it's easy, and then if you need to do some hard stuff, the option is there. You're not boxed into a rigid kind of framework. A bit about the technology that's underlying this. So less, and we've done this in prior webinars when we first introduced the topic, but just to revisit it, it's a kind of a language extension for CSS that lets you have, I think the most important thing is variables, so that you can say main color, secondary color, and then just reuse that so that you can make changes in one place. It's pretty powerful. We did start to introduce this back last year in 8.3 and 8.4, and again, the goal is to get to the point where you don't have to do CSS. It wasn't to make things more technical and to have more options. So the 8.3 release, I call it the hackers only, because we said, yeah, we support less now. We also created that theme roller project, but it was kind of like you're still putting the pieces together in those files yourself. In 8.4, we decided to start shipping the default theme in the project. This was a big step. Again, if you're feeling brave, you can open up that less file and start manually editing those properties. But finally, in the Q1 build, anybody can start to create variations on this theme. and you don't need to have any special knowledge about CSS or less. And right now we support multiple versions. Multiple themes are currently possible. We just only have the one default theme, but we kind of reserve judgment on what kind of themes we need. Right now we want to drive the most generic kinds of variations that people will want. Looking forward though, we're going to continue on this because we think it's pretty important to make it very productive to style your application. So we're going to continue to enhance the default theme as needed to make sure that, like, if we find that people still have to go back and write CSS to get what they want, it means that the theme is not working well. So we're going to keep an eye on that. We also want to offer you pre-built variations. So yeah, the dark theme was pretty easy to make, but why not just give you a dark theme and let you tweak that? So we can offer variations. And I think that we can enhance the editors too. So we're looking to see what kinds of feedback you have on the editor, and we have some ideas of our own. Again, this is just the start, and things will be backwards compatible. So again, we'll be versioning these default themes and anything that's added so that you can kind of evolve your product with those enhancements. The theme roller project started out as a separate kind of GitHub project, and the goal was to really provide that integration of web components and modules in your own application and being able to bring things together but still have a consistent look and feel. And so it introduced less, and it introduced some very generic properties and some built-in generic selectors. So things like having main colors and secondary colors and a light version of that and a dark version of that, and what is your default border, etc. But also these built-in selectors that I showed you. So just being able to make something a clickable hover text, or just being able to say, I want this thing to be the full width and to be centered. It's pretty simple to do in CSS, but why should you have to do that? You should just be able to stick these things on and go with it. So I think we'll be extending those as we go. You can download, or you can go visit the documentation, I mean, for that theme roller project I showed you on GitHub, and we'll put these links up at the end. So let's go a bit off script here and try to do this from scratch, and I'm also open to interruptions. If you spot any good questions that you think we should answer, then we can
there's a couple
have fun with it.
There's a couple of questions coming in already.
Okay, go ahead.
From Stephen, is there code completion on the reference properties?
Yes, there is. I'm glad you asked that, because I had in my notes to talk about that. So if we look at the file that we had open in the editor, this custom Servoy theme properties, if I wanted to change a color here and I hit my @ symbol, I get all of these. Or at any point, if I do control space, just like in the JavaScript editor, it brings up the code complete, so you don't have to copy paste or memorize these things.
That's pretty cool.
It is. Any other questions so far?
Yeah, there's a couple more coming in. So the properties listed here on the left-hand side, are they static, or can you add your own as well?
We can show an example of that now. Currently, you can do your own properties, but you do that in the less file that gets generated. So I'll get to that. That's sort of like the hacker way. This is the in the box way. So let's stay in the box, and then we'll do one example of going out of the box, because I think that naturally the Servoy community is filled with hackers. So let's start easy though. Let's start from scratch. Don't save. I'm gonna make a new solution, and I'll call this off script. One thing that's nice in the new release is it already allows you to import modules that you might want, so security, search utilities, that sort of thing. It also by default is with hiding a bunch of stuff that, you know, like default is ng client, that kind of thing. So we're trying to make the first use experience here nicer and the ability to import some stuff. It also imports web components by default, so you don't have to go to the web package manager and get Servoy Extra, for example. It's there from the start. One of the things it does, one of the advanced options, but the default is that it generates the less file for you. So you can see over here in the solution properties, this offscript.less is generated automatically for you. It's really just a stub, and it does import the theme, the underlying default theme. The actual support of import in a less file is new in the Q1 build. It was not in the 8.4. So I think that was a pretty important thing to make sure we have. So this really allows you to do some extension. And this will answer that one question that I said we'll get to, but we'll come back to this. Let's start simple. So let's make a new form. I'm just going to call this one main. It doesn't need a data source. And we'll go and get, again, a lot of the default component libraries are now in the new solution automatically. So that's nice. I'm going to grab this side nav, drop it on the form. I'm going to use my CSS positioning here and just kind of put it full screen. So that's top, right, bottom, left, and then we don't care about width and height. Funny, I think it's done a bit of caching of the dark theme from before. Maybe there's only one instance. That's okay, we'll just revert it. So now if I go to the media and I open this up, let's have a look. Oh yeah, these are all back to the default. That's what I expected. I think it's just kind of cached something here in the editor because it is still showing dark. Oh no, that is the default for side nav. I'm sorry. This is why we go off script. Okay, so we'll create another form like an orders form. Grab the orders table from example data. I'm going to drop a few fields on there. Okay. Yeah, there's sort of the default that you get, that vanilla thing out of the box. In the first form, the side nav is going to contain orders. We could also, on load, we'll build that menu so that you can see it. Do something like this. And we need an array of menu items. So we have, by default, orders, call it the text, we'll call it orders. And we'll give it a font icon. I think it's icon style class. FA list, that sounds good. We need to call that here. Okay, so let's at least just start with that. I'm going to launch this in the browser. There we go. Okay, so this is what you get without doing any theming at all. And let's say we want to straight away start to change things. So we go and grab this default theme properties, and do we see the main color yet? Not yet. So tell you what, let's put a table on orders and we get that with like the row highlight. So I'm going to grab, excuse me, the extra components, and we'll drag the table on here and a column for that. And we want to set the found set for this to be, I'm going to import a module here that gives me some data model stuff. And then I get some relations out of that. So the found set property of this table is going to be orders to order details, and make this data provider order details to products product name. And we'll make this thing a bit bigger here. Like that. All right, let's have a look now. What's going on here? Try this again. Oh, I don't see my table. Could be that it's off the bounds or something. Huh. Maybe adding that module did something. Let me start from scratch. Put the table on. Set the found set to orders to order details. And we'll give it a data provider on the product name. No. Huh. Okay, well let's do something else then. I don't know what's going on there. That didn't happen earlier this morning. Let's do the side nav to start with. So we got that highlight color on the side nav. The way that I did that is to go down to the side nav properties, way down here, and the border is all zeros. So CSS borders go top right, bottom left. And I like that little left side border to show up. So let's give it something of 4 pixels. So you can see as soon as I change it, this becomes highlighted. And it shows me what I've overridden. And if I launch this and I click, you see I get the default orange one here to show that it's selected. It also becomes kind of that light gray as well. Let's do something like change the border color of everything that has a border. I think that's it. It'll be a simple one. Border color right now is kind of a medium light gray. We could make it, something else, and now you can see all the fields, for example, go to orange. That's the kind of the default border. Would be nice to get that grid, but I think you guys get the idea. Do we have any requests?
Yeah, there's a couple more. I'm sorry, there's a couple more questions coming in. Andreas is suggesting you didn't save when you placed a grid.
Yeah, I did. There's some issue. I don't know what it was.
There's a question from Steve. What would a third-party component need to have to make it work well with the theme roller?
Okay, the third-party component doesn't need anything. The theme roller needs it. So we have to go in and update it to expose what it needs to be. So if it's a third party that we don't maintain, you'd have to get into your own less file and expose those, but you wouldn't see the component stuff in here, but you could take from this and kind of inherit it. So let's do a bit about the built-in selectors, and then we'll go and do the custom less stuff, because I think that shows kind of the hacker way if you want to really extend things. If we wanted to go and put a label on here, and just call this, I don't know, order info, and start to use those selectors. This is where I was wasting lots of time this morning just playing with all the different built-in stuff. If you now come down to the style class property and start to look at, well, what do we have for text? We want text info, I don't know. That's a bit light, but I think that's, we could do brand info, info. There we go. There we go. You know, and we want it to be centered, so we do text center, puts it in the middle, and we have something like that. If we want to put a button down here, and this one is, we'll do button primary. We get the primary color, and maybe we make another one. Oops, I copied a bunch of stuff. That was not good. And we want to have this one be the button tertiary color. Oops. And you can see that one goes gray. Maybe this is cancel and the other one's save. Not Dave. Okay, well, you get the idea. So those are the selectors, and you can see I get code complete on all of them. So it's fairly easy to kind of try them out. You can also go to the documentation and see what the selectors are really meant for. And again, all of those are driven by the theme. So if I wanted to go down to the brand settings and say, well, BG primary is not what I want it to match all the orange stuff that I have, I could go down and find brand primary here, and that's that like blue color you saw. And instead I could say I want main color, maybe main color dark. If I save that, anything that I apply that BG style to is that primary style is gonna get that. Not just buttons, but anything that has we can attach BG primary to. Okay, let's do the final, I think, example, which would be to really go and customize things. So I go into the solution properties here. The file that's generated was this offscript.less. It has nothing in it, but it imports the theme, the default theme. So what I could do is I could make my own class, for example, and let's call it like my custom label. And I want the color to be, and now normally in CSS I would just put the color, but I could say, you know, I want the color to be main color dark, and I want the background to be, you know, secondary secondary color, I don't know. And then if we go on to our orders form, I'll put this one down here, and you'll see that in the style class I have my custom label. I don't know what this is going to look like. Is it transparent? No. Let's have a look here. Maybe I didn't. The problem with this is you don't really get a code complete here. This is just raw less than CSS, so maybe I copied something wrong. It would be a main color. Let's see where I have that somewhere. Just one of these. Yeah, I think that was right. Yeah, I don't know. I did something probably in the second line. So there you can see I get the main color, and then I could do background color, secondary color. There we go. So we start to get some of that. Now you can reference your own, or you can reference properties out of the default theme, which is probably what you want to do for a lot of stuff, because the more you start to fork, then the more maintenance you have, right? If you just want to reskin everything and change a few key properties, then that's nice. But what you can do is also do your own properties, and I'll show you that in a minute. But you could, for example, use some less functions here, like you want to lighten this secondary color 15%. So now you can see it's a bit lighter than the side nav over here. So that's one way that you can get under the hood and extend things. Another, probably the better way to do this, as long as you're hacking away and using less, is you might want to make something called like my custom color, and then you kind of move this out. Oops. What happened to my text up here? I kind of dragged my mouse. Let me do this again. My custom color. So I define it there, and down here I can reference it, and you can see that it still works. So now I can use my custom color anywhere in my own stuff. So really, the right way to use less is to avoid putting, primitive values into your selectors. It's really to externalize those so you can reskin things in one place. So that's kind of how, if you were to build your own, bring your own component, you would have some internal style selectors that would already be in the CSS file of that component probably, and then you would want to create ways to expose those. So this would maybe be overriding, my component dot, header label or something, and then it would override it, and then you could really just inject stuff from the theme, so that's how you would really skin your component consistent with everything else, is to override the selectors that are in that component style and then apply things from the default theme. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's a couple more coming in. Question from Juan. We have our own SASS files. Can we create our own properties in those theme files?
SASS is not supported, so you'd have to convert that to less to be able to use it.
All right. And Juan also has a question. When you created a new module, these modules you can import when creating the solution, can they be customized? I mean, can I add other modules of my own to that list?
Yeah, so one thing that you'll notice is this import here. Now that in the latest build of Servoy, we support the importing in less files. So if your module brings its own customization, then the container needs to just import it. So, and I wanted to have an example of that, but that's quite a bit more work, but I could show you in practice how it would work. You'd have your media here. Well, suppose that you had another module that also had media, but I'll put it in here for the sake of example. And so I'll make create a media file and call it my module.less. And if I come in here and say, my module color, just make it bright red, and then some class, my module selector, and
I think Juan's question was even more off script than we are already off script. And he's talking about when you created the new solution, you were importing things, and about being able to customize that menu.
So which menu?
Not the less file, but the module itself. When you created when you started the Servoy solution, you imported. You imported two things, and his question
I imported a module that just had some relations and stuff in it. That doesn't have anything to do with the style.
All right, Juan, you'll have to rephrase your question to make it clear for us. The menu with a list of components, he says now.
The menu with the main menu?
Well, no, when you were creating the solution, if you go to new solution.
Oh, this one here?
You were importing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, right now that's sort of pre-configured in Servoy Developer. This is our first step at making sort of first use and the experience better and speeding up the creation of applications that by including all the things that you might need, which will probably grow to include some pre-built themes, like some pre-built variations that you could choose from, and that sort of thing. So for now, this is sort of closed. You can't add your own stuff to it. But that's a good idea. Probably at some point we can expose it, just like how we expose the web package manager to be able to point to your own web packages. The themes, you'll be able to add your own themes and choose them, and maybe someday we'll be able to grow this menu as well.
Okay, good suggestion, Juan. Keep them coming. Then there's another off-script question from Wim, and I'm actually not sure what the question means. And Wim is very brief in his questioning. So for anybody posting questions, please be as extensive as you can on the channel.
Otherwise, I'll just answer it any way I want to.
Because Wim says, still smart client available. So I'm guessing here this question could go two ways. Is smart client still generally available in this new upcoming build, 2019.03?
Yes.
Okay, so Wim, smart client is still available. And if we take this question the other way, we're just guessing here, but this is why we go off script. This styling, I guess, is not available in smart client.
Correct. The smart client is like a pseudo CSS. It doesn't even support CSS3 because it's not really being evaluated in a browser. So.
Okay. All right, Wim, I hope we answered your question both ways. So this type of styling is not available in Smart Client. Smart Client in general is still available, but if you are still using it, you should start looking at the NG desktop client, as that will be the long-term successor. But for as long as Java will support it, we will continue to include Smart Client in current and upcoming Servoy builds.
Yeah, and before we say goodbye, again, here's all the relevant links. The usual ones, I would just point out that theme roller project, you don't need to go there to download it or anything, but if you want to look at the documentation for those built-in selectors, that's the right place to go. And just a bit about what's coming up. Again, we are in RC mode, or we will be by Monday. You'll get the Q1 build, and we'll be in RC mode for the rest of the month. So we are aligning our tech webinars towards that, and there is also some enhancements around OAuth and consuming APIs. So we want to give an update on the new OAuth plugin and what that means for you. And again, the example that you saw today, we'll make that available on the forum. We could just give you the dark theme and others as an export, and you can see what properties are overridden. And I know we're a couple behind too on the example solutions, so we'll catch up on those as well on the forum.
All right, excellent. So for anybody interested in trying out, make sure to go to servoy.com/download and download the latest RC. Give it a try with your current applications. Post feedback if you're running into any issues. And we look forward to seeing you in about 2 weeks. And we will post this recording pretty soon. The archive has been updated yesterday. So if you are looking at the previous webinars, they are posted, the short version on our website. The longer off-script edition is on the forum. So we look forward to seeing you again next week. And thanks, Sean, for presenting.